Welcome to the Construction Brothers Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Campbell, and with me, like he is every week, my brother, Eddie Campbell.
What's up, Tyler?
Not much, Eddie. Well, this week, a drywall contractor speaks. Guys, I'm sorry. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so you guys are just gonna have to talk. I'm just not energetic this morning.
No. It's gonna be fine because Dan came in here live. This guy's ready to go, man. This is gonna be a good show.
Always.
What's up, Dan?
What's up?
Thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, dude, you need to go ahead. Let's get in and tell people who you are and what you do here.
What would you say that you do here? So I am. I'm Dan Wiese with Wies Drywall and Construction Corporation. We wouldn't name it that today, but my grandfather and his brother decided that was a good name for it back in 1971. We've been in business for almost 52 years now. I'm the third generation. So we're your typical commercial drywall contractor, metal studs, drywall, ceilings, all the things based here in St. Louis, Missouri.
Allow me a dad joke moment, but that sounds riveting.
For the love, man. All right. So, dude, all right. So you guys have a shop too. Like this, you're not just like a standard like drywall operation. You guys have like a legit shop where you do prefab and some of that other stuff, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we have a prefab facility. It's called Wies Offsite. It's a separate entity, but anyway. Where we have roll forming machines. We get into 3D modeling, BIM design, whatever buzzword you want to throw at that. And we componentize construction, we panelize, prefab, get into a little bit of modular, all kinds of different things.
It's all for synergy, right? It's all for synergy, synergy, all of it.
For the love of synergy.
For the love of synergy.
I have a personal question, and that's just a shared pain of like you have a lengthy business title, and when you're signing lien waivers and you actually have to get that. Like, is that ever annoying to you? Because when I'm writing out Accelerated Building Solutions, Inc., I'm like, why couldn't we have just come up with something that was like 5 letters long so I don't have to fill this paperwork out?
You know what? I don't sign lien waivers, so I really...
Oh, burn.
Non-compliant sub right there. Jeez.
No, we have...
I got people for that.
People who can sign lien waivers that aren't me, right?
Dude, I appreciate that in your life because I wish I had people. I don't have people like that. I am the people.
He had people, and then his people left.
And then my people, that guy right there said, I'm out of here. So,
we are very fortunate to have an amazing team, right? And we're still multi-generational. I mean, like my 90-year-old grandmother still actually comes into the office at Wies Drywall like 3 to 4 days a week. She doesn't really do obviously much for the business. But, then my dad is there still pretty much every day as well. So it allows me to go do all the other fun stuff that we get to talk about. So, yeah.
Grandma's not out there slinging sheetrock mud.
No, she sure isn't. No, but she has literally sat in the same like office and location since we moved into that building, which we remodeled it since then, but in 1980.
She sounds awesome.
Dude. So you'll know my grandma. I have like my friends will be around town. They're like, I think I just saw your grandma at Costco. I'm like, what was it? Like big white SUV, right? Big red poofy permed hair, ring on every finger, sequins everywhere. I'm like, yeah, that was my grandma. Like never met her. I'm like, yep, you saw her. Yep, for sure. So yeah, she's great.
That's awesome.
Dude, so good. All right. Well, let's get into some of the technicalities of being a drywall contractor, man. Like, I don't know. Do we want to start with the joys of drywall contracting or the pains of drywall contracting?
Just throw that out. What are the joys and pains of drywall contracting?
All of them. That's our only question. Enjoy.
Oh, we can talk for a while about that. So, some of the joys. I'll start with the joys, and then we'll go to the pains. Truly, the joys are we get to help our community. We get to help our contractors. We get to help the folks that are under our umbrella with a pain point that they otherwise, wouldn't get solved anywhere else, right? And walls and ceilings, right? It's Most people don't even realize that. But, we get the opportunity every day to help people from our community, get jobs in the trades, teach them skills, meaningful skill sets that they can go and literally, let's say they go move somewhere, like they can take that skill set anywhere they want to go with them. We've got folks that have, come from areas of our city that, are a little down, and we've been able to, through construction and through drywall contracting, to be able to help them get into better parts of the area, or maybe help their parents remodel homes. There's all kinds of different things, that are really some of the joys that we just get the opportunity to help people, and then obviously our clients. We love helping our clients, love helping them execute a project and making them ultimately the general contractors that we do business with, the heroes of the construction process. That's our goal, right? I'm like, that's what I always tell my clients. I'm like, my name should not be in your mouth in a bad way. That means I did a disservice to you as a specialty contractor. Obviously things happen all the time, but that's always our target. So those are some of the joys.
That's a good way of putting it, man. That's a really good way of putting it. My name should never be in your mouth in a bad way. Like that, yeah, that's a good goal.
I have failed at that goal.
We all have here, guys. But that's always the target,
That is the target.
Construction, as you guys are very aware, construction is such a dynamic place. And every time we step onto a job site, unless all the specialty contractors have worked together over and over again, most of the time we're with a new team or new team members, right? Other specialty trades or general contractor, and so that's why I'm really an advocate for just having a stellar team, because that's how we ultimately get the projects done successfully. That's how we stay profitable. That's how we stay safe. That's how we stay all of these things, right? When the team is really good and can execute well, have good communication, whether it's my internal team or the project team, it makes the job flow so much better and easier, and our people aren't frustrated, the clients aren't frustrated, the owners aren't frustrated. It makes everything so much better.
So I want to set the table for the pains, and I want to pit that in. Dan, you are a positive guy. Like, you have come at this and you're like, we're going to have a good attitude about it. We're going to strive to do good work. I love my team. I like doing things for my community. So obviously we're not dealing with somebody who just wants to complain about life, but part of our Contractor Speaks series is trying to create this feedback loop where we can all learn. So that's the heart of this pain point thing. So tell us some of the things that are unique to being a drywall subcontractor or specialty contractor, and maybe get into some of the pains that go with trying to modularize and innovate on that construction process.
Yeah, that's a big can of worms there, Eddie.
I like doing that to the guests. Just to keep them on there. I'm going to ask a large, sweeping question that you can't possibly answer all of. So go, have at it.
My ADD brain, I'm like, okay, like there's that part, there's that part, there's that part. So you're probably gonna have to remind me of that question later, because I'll probably forget.
I've already forgotten too, Dan. It's all good.
What are your pains, sir?
So, some of the pain points really start at the very beginning. Oftentimes, historically speaking, right? So I'm in my late 30s, right? But I feel like I've been in this industry for 50 years, just because of that. I can remember at 5 years old, my dad and my grandpa talking at Thanksgiving table about work, right? About clients, about problem areas, right? About all these different things. So I feel like I've been in this business way longer than what my hairline shows right now. But anyway, one of the it's up front, right? Oftentimes I find, specifically for our company, that we partner with people who truly want to partner with us and not being treated like just another number on bid day. So when we submit a bid, we're trying to always include a very full scope. And oftentimes, we're competing or bidding against people who maybe don't. That's really difficult, and so just really just that proper scope, because, part of this is as our economy goes along, right? And we see less and less of workforce, right? And we see really a kind of a raging economy even right now. Specialty contractors really have some options, right now, but that's not, I don't like to always say that, because ultimately it's like, we like to be part of the team. We like to partner with our clients at a very high level. But when we don't feel like we necessarily get that service from them and the feedback from our clients around okay, here's where you guys were at, here's the spread of the bids. And it's like, well, okay, but did you really compare all the scopes? Did we really look at and even get into some of the materials? I understand that general contractors don't always have the time to do that, right? When they're under a super tight bid schedule, right? And we're not asking, this is not an absolute, right? Obviously, pretty much anything I say is not going to be an absolute scenario all the time. But, I would just say giving the best shot that you can when you have it. Because if let's say we bid 5 jobs with a general contractor, we're trying to get a new client, and we don't really hear anything back. We get no phone calls. We get no scope review, no call-ins. All of a sudden, it's like, well, they probably have their person that they really like, and that's okay. We're not here to try to disrupt anything, but at the same time, we're not really trying to feel used here either. And that's kind of what's hard. That can be a pain point. There's ways to break that. There's ways to, it's just ultimately talking with people, developing relationships with people, right? And I put that onus on us, ultimately, is not having, always having a forefront and good relationship with people all the time. So it's a two-way street, ultimately. So segue that, if I recall, the next part of the question was, how do you innovate? And that's why ultimately I've taken a lot of this on ourselves. So we see a lot of different startups, all kinds of different people in the construction space these days, right? We see a lot of really good VC funded backed firms, venture backed, private equity backed. We see all these different places. And I kind of took it upon myself a couple of years ago to be like, well, we have this operating drywall business, and so we kind of have the perfect, quote unquote, I don't like to say test lab, but, because everything gets really vetted by the time we get there. But to be able to start implementing some of these strategies that I see in startup land into our business. And, so that's kind of why we took it upon ourselves. So, oftentimes when we're asking these questions. We're saying, okay, this job, can we get this engineering change? We'll bring our cold form engineer and do shops. Well, as long as we get our third-party engineers to sign off on things, oftentimes, and then we get the EOR, let's say we're not the EOR, we get the EOR to sign off on them. It's like, we're good. We didn't, we're not doing anything that's different, right? And we're able to prefabricate or componentize things off-site, ship them to the site. And oftentimes we're seeing, a better quality. Like I have a guy out in our shop right now welding a whole bunch of headers out. He's doing that in our facility. He's doing that at waist height. He's not having to reach around. He's, we're getting safety hazards out of the way, because he's not having to get up behind some, steel to be able to get that weld in. He's obviously a certified welder, all these different things, right? When you take it upon yourself to innovate in this landscape, just as a specialty contractor, you have a lot more opportunities rather than trying to start fresh and having another company come into our business trying to sell us things. Right, we're able to just innovate and create that loop ourselves.
This is way intriguing to me because you've gone from relationship-based business to innovation, and I would tie and tether those together as the secret sauce you absolutely have to do the panelization, modularization, things of this nature. You mentioned maybe trying to get something into a design change. I got to work with an engineer because I want to bypass condition at this slab because it works better for my panelized wall. And I need them to change that for me. You don't get that done unless you've got a relationship with the general contractor and the design team. And so how do you see that playing out? Like, how important is that to you for the panelization modular side where we're putting things together in larger pieces?
So a lot of times that's, those conversations start a lot earlier, now that we have this facility, and it's kind of getting to be more known that we do these kind of things. We're starting to get people come to us now and saying like, how can you help us with this? Right. And that goes along with even how we started this conversation, right? We're here to help our clients be the hero. And so ultimately it's like, when you get people that are like, man, we have a super tight schedule on this job, how can we progress this schedule? How can we get this building closed in faster? How can we, whatever that looks like, all of a sudden it's a very, really cool dynamic because, we're already in B2B and construction, it's already a super, you're very ingrained in your client's business, but it ultimately allows us to even help them even more. And that's what's just really cool for me. It's like, there's no sneaking anything in, right? It's like, okay, cool. Here's a blank canvas. Here's our building design. How do we make this thing, extremely structurally sound, because if we're providing people with a bad experience, right, or we're doing things where we say we're sneaking them in, which we never sneak anything in. Everything gets an engineer sign off, all those kind of things. We're just able to help them in ways that, maybe somebody else can't or wouldn't or doesn't have the capacity, right? Or anything those other things. So for sure, the relationship and the innovation is really tied. But I mean, innovation, I don't really view even what we do here as innovation. Like, gosh, I can remember guys I wasn't alive then, but even in like 1972, like my grandfather was panelizing jobs even way back then, And so it's like these practices have been around for such a long time. We panelized in the 70s, in the 80s, we did all kinds of stuff like this. But the difference today that we have is the technology piece. They're using softwares like Revit, we use Revit here, MWF, like all these different things, like, and having those people in-house really give us the ability to have a foreman on a job site call and be like, hey, I need, a whole bunch of headers this size. Great. One of our folks here can model it up really fast. We can print the studs out of our machine. We can make those headers. We can weld them up, screw them together, whatever we need to do, and then ship them out. And ultimately we're saving just a ton of time in the field for that, which is really beneficial.
Yeah. So we've dipped our toe into this light gauge metal framing world a little bit. And so what kind of equipment are you guys running for this? I've heard FrameCAD, I've heard Howick. What are you running?
So we're running FrameCAD right now.
Gotcha. And you're using Revit in order to get everything modeled up. And then there's a process by which we go from Revit into the FrameCAD system. You said printing studs. So I want you to expound on that a little bit. I don't know if printing is exactly what's going down. So what's happening in that? FrameCAD is a machine. I don't want people to mistake the wording of that for something that's not a stud manufacturing or fabricating machine.
Correct. So generically speaking, FrameCAD, Howick, there's all kinds of different machines, right? Ultimately, they're roll forming machines is what they are. The easiest way for me to tell people about what those really are is like, have you ever seen, the guys that come do the gutters on your house, right? And they roll full length gutters. It's basically that same process, just much larger, and they have a lot more tech built into them. So yeah, they're roll forming machines ultimately is the generic term. So, we just so happen to run FrameCAD, which is a version of a roll former. So yeah, so we'll do the design work in Revit. We'll use other plugins as well. And then that goes into, FrameCAD has some specific software that their machines use, detailer, structure, things like that. But ultimately, it all sets up the machine to be able to run the design file. So when I say print off, that's just what we started using that a couple of years ago. Printing off really just means rolling the studs out of the machine to the correct length that we need them, which is cool because we have the ability to roll out like let's just say, or print off really as little as like a couple inch piece of stud that would fit into an assembly. So yeah, and all the way up to, we've rolled out probably 50 footers to date out of our machine.
So material usage is being absolutely maximized.
Correct.
Because where you would have a stack of 12-foot studs in the field and you're hacking 11 and 5/16 off the end of every one of them, you're rolling it to that length.
That's exactly right.
Nothing lost, nothing trashed.
And then also everything, because there's some tooling, right? Like when we make a different cut, let's say a web notch into where we cut out part of the notch to make another stud run through it. All that parts pieces, all of our test pieces, all that stuff gets recycled as well. So yeah, we try to operate in almost in a zero waste environment.
I love what you're saying here because it's just really cool to see that a specialty contractor is coming in and innovating. I think that is the only way, or one of the only ways for us to really get it done, right? Is for people like y'all to go out there and take it upon themselves to explore these different tools, to explore these different softwares and things and try them and figure out what works really well for them. Now, that may change from shop to shop, but I really think it's so critical for our subs to start innovating because you see so many of them come out to the field and they beat it to fit and paint it to match. They don't really take the time to figure stuff out. And I think if you're a GC and you're out there looking for you've got to look for a partner like this. Like look for somebody that actually cares for the entire process and cares about making it as seamless as possible.
A lot of the ways that we've innovated and have been pushing to innovate really just comes out of a lack of just people that want to do construction work anymore, right? I mean, if you look, what is there, a 10 to 20% gap in the workforce around the country right now, depending on the market. That's difficult to overcome. So you have to do other things, right? That's where innovation comes in. As we continue to get pushed and pressured, you're going to see more companies doing, different things. What the process I explained to you that we do prefab, other folks may not do it that way, right? There's other guys that may just be whatever, processing drywall sheets, right, through a drywall routing machine, that they have. And that's how they save. I mean, there's all kinds. That's why whenever you hear, especially a specialty contractor or a drywall contractor say, we prefab, well, it's like, there's all kinds of different flavors of what that means, right? Because it's how you can get your folks in your field to adapt to what you're doing.
I love that. Okay, you're a drywall contractor speaks. This doesn't even scratch the surface of what you are really doing as a company. I want to highlight that, right? That's maybe a construction mindset moment for everybody to just stop and think about the fact that we're saying, oh, we got a specialty contractor on the show. We're going to hear about what a drywall contractor thinks about things. Well, this drywall contractor is doing all of the prefab modular stuff that everybody's like, all these little buzzy terms you have adapted into your processes. You've got tooling in your shop. You are thinking through innovative processes. You are engaging design. You are pre-planning. So it's really an undersale.
Since the 70s.
Since the 70s, which is so true. There are so many things that we're this is new. It's like, no, we're just saying it again.
Yeah.
It's just what goes around comes around, at the end of the day. But what really enables us to work all this into our workflows every day, though, is just the technology piece, right? And that's what we were missing in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, is just that ability to take somebody, right? Teach them how to 3D model, take a carpenter ultimately, teach them how to 3D model. So they already know how to build stuff. We're just teaching them how to build stuff in a computer, because they think through, okay, how can I get my hand into this location, right? Where these king studs are or whatever. All the different things, right? All the different nuances of how you put a job together. And that's oftentimes that gets discredited.
Is that typically the flow that you guys have for bringing in modelers? Are you bringing in carpenters from the field and training them, or are you bringing in younger people and training them up? Like, is it a mixture? How are you getting people in place to do the modeling for you?
So right now, like our modeler here is a carpenter, right, by trade. And then, he has a different background. Like he had a CAD background, some other different things. And then we taught him Revit. But, it's all the different ways though. It's, because we use some third-party folks as well. And so, they'll use, like, there's like one person, right, who's really good, maybe has trade experience, maybe doesn't, but they understand, right? Because it's kind of an engineering-minded mindset, as you guys know. But, we're just taking the shop drawings from our engineer, right, modeling them in, and then, kind of do a QA/QC on them for, so then maybe they have some people working under them that don't have a construction background. And so then, it just takes a lot of time and manpower to layer in every stud. And so then you'll QA/QC those to make sure it's actually buildable.
There's a lot to do QA/QC on too.
Yeah.
That's I mean, in steel, we see the same thing, right? It's there's a lot to take into account. And so you have to have somebody that's good driving tech in order for it to actually be helpful. If you don't have somebody that's decent driving the technology or like driving the software, I'm sure you've felt this before.
Oh,
yeah. That's a big pain. And people don't realize how difficult it is to get a good modeler in on your team. And it's really an industry right now that it's ripe for the picking. Like if you've got the skin for it, it's a great area to go in and start modeling and start understanding the modeling processes. great area for that, but just be ready. It's difficult. it's not easy.
That's what I always tell. It's like, this is literally the business, our prefab business, right? Is literally the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It is hard. We got even just getting our roll forming machines in the country, right? Really, like when COVID was starting, right? In the beginning of 2020, from that to modeling to, how we intertwine this into our workflows. I was talking to some of my mentors a couple of years ago when we were starting this, and like, this business literally makes 0 cents on the outset, but it's like, you just trust the process, at the end of the day. It's like, okay, and you can listen to all the consultants in the world, and all that. But at the end of the day, it's like, you kind of have to just be an entrepreneur, trust your gut, and just do what you think is right, in order to serve your clients in the way that how they need to be served.
There's I gotta ask. I keep nerding into the weeds, but the roll form equipment that came out of New Zealand.
Yeah, correct. Ours did. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like mid-COVID. You're trying to get a specialized piece of equipment, literally halfway, all the way across the world.
Yeah.
I bet that was a challenge.
It wasn't. So we were getting our machines in the country in February, so right about now of 2021. It wasn't terrible then. It really only took it still took I don't know if I recall 12 weeks, 10 or 12 weeks probably to get it into the country. I have friends who have since gotten machines, and it's taking them 6 months, 9 months to get equipment into the country.
I got a quote from a steel fabricator the other day on a machine that was 14 months.
Yeah,
14 months to get it. And it was a big machine too. It's not small, but I think it was coming from Austria. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it takes a minute. So you're like, all right, we're gonna prefab, and now we wait.
Well, I think the other thing too is they're facing all the supply chain issues as well, so they may be having trouble getting hydraulic cylinders or even just an O-ring in something, right? At the manufacturer level. So they have to allot for all this time to get their supply chain and then also deal with shipping, So yeah, it's brutal right now.
How's it retooled your shop? How have you had to reconfigure?
I bought a whole new facility. Just bad. So yeah. So at our drywall,
that makes sense.
So we have 2 facilities now. So at our drywall business, which is really just about 5 or 6 minutes away from here, we've been there since 1980. So it's maybe only 15,000 square feet or something. Facility, which they're even busting at the seams over there. And so then we have a 40,000 square foot facility here just 5 minutes away. And we're actually not that far from busting at the seams as well.
So the challenge of, I love this part of prefab, the challenge of storing material after you prefab.
Yes.
Right. So you got wall panels. What does that look like in your yard? Getting the flatbed worked out, where does it sit? This stuff can't sit in the weather either.
Ooh, no. Yeah, so oftentimes we're kind of doing a just-in-time delivery typically. So yeah, we're really trying to implement where we don't build things too far ahead of time. So yeah, if you go in, we kind of have 2 sections of our warehouse. So if you go into the back part of our warehouse, when I bring clients in, they'll be like, man, it's kind of empty in here. And I'm like, well, just give it a couple weeks and it'll be completely busting at the seams. And then, we'll bring in whatever semis or however we're taking it out, and then all of a sudden it's just completely empty, And so, yeah, we try not to build too much too far ahead of time.
I want your and other general contractors to understand that, because GCs get nervous. They want to know that you're actually going to show up on time with the thing you said you were going to show up with. And so a lot of times that little shop tour is going to happen. I want to come and see how the process is going. I mean, we finished shop drawings 6 weeks ago. You should have all this sitting on your floor, right? And you're like, well, but is your site ready? Are you ready for us?
That's where I was going to go with this, is that when you're doing a just-in-time delivery method like this, it is so critical that you don't lie to each other.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Has that ever happened where somebody's sandbagging their schedule and then you show up, they're not ready for you, and then that causes a catastrophe or the opposite of it?
We're so involved up front in this stuff where, oftentimes our superintendents are going by those jobs as well. So when we're whatever, intertwining steel, or what are like a prefab process into our normal construction work, we have a superintendent that's also managing that job, so they're going to go out there, they're going to be taking measurements to square up the model to the actual, we're making those adjustments ahead of time. So that way, we normally know a week-ish, a little bit ahead of time, couple weeks, where we're at, what we need, when we need it. We're getting sequencing going, kind of all those different things. So that way, when we show up, our field crews are going to start their layout process. Then they're, maybe they're going to double check our measurements. Typically they're right, but double check our measurements, make sure we're good. And then that's when we're going to start shipping material, right? Start rolling and shipping material.
Ooh, layout.
Yeah.
Layout. Have you done anything with any of the robotic applications like Dusty or
Lydex is one.
Lydex or Rugged? I think those are the couple. Have you done anything with those yet?
No. So, that's what's weird, right? Is it's adoption. It's tech adoption in the field. So as all these different things that we're doing, right, that are so tech forward, we still have processes that we're behind. And every company is going to be like that. We're ahead in some places, we're behind in others. So no, we still are pretty old school in that regard into how we lay out, because a lot of our foremen, they want to see it and double check the wall layout and make sure that it's right, and I can argue sometimes I'm blue in the face, right? About look, guys, just double check. Let's use some of these processes. Let's do this, right? And sometimes it's just well, it's not always worth the fight, right? Because it's we get an at-bat maybe once a year to, talk about new softwares. We get an at-bat once every couple of years at talking about how we change, how the field puts jobs into motion. So yeah, it's kind of picking and choosing battles on really where we want to fight hard and where we don't sometimes, but as we implement more and more tech into our processes, though, that will just be a byproduct, right, in how we lay out. So that's why we're approaching it kind of how we're approaching it.
Yeah, you went to layout and then I went to scanning.
Well, I was also there too.
Yeah. The verification of what's been built. We've talked about tolerances and different things because somebody's setting your table and getting ready for you. And if they don't do that properly, you could come out with large pieces of fabricated wall that don't fit. So the scanning was another thing that I see adopting into this workflow. Well,
so the scanning's hard, and maybe we could talk about that because there's really, to then wade through a point cloud, right, and double check all of your measurements, that is extremely time intensive.
Data intensive too.
Data intensive.
Yes. There's a lot of data that's captured on point clouds, depending on the accuracy level that you go to. Eddie does a lot of that too, so he's a little more averse in this conversation.
Yeah,
but
I see the sensitivity to how much data you're taking in is certainly a thing. Because if you go out and mass 50 scans in a day, 50, 65 scans in a day from a stationary scanner, you're going to bring home a lot of data. And there's a lot of points to weed through, the registration of everything. And just getting everything synced up. There's a process that happens in the field, and then there's an equal and opposite time spend to me in the office. So it's interesting. And I think it can be helpful, but I hear it. There's a practicality there. You said earlier, and I'm almost going to come to your defense on this. Like you said earlier, well, we're behind in some things. Sometimes the thing we're doing is good enough. Sometimes we do need to ask, if I go and I move forward into this thing everybody's saying is great, will I save time and will I make more money? Will I be more accurate? Will I be more efficient? We've got to ask these questions and be fair about them. Mm-hmm. So maybe the answer is no, scanning wouldn't be a beneficial thing when I can capture it this way. There was a long time we thought that scanning anchor bolts to justify where they sat was a great idea. But I can say that I believe currently that a regular layout is a better way of capturing that information.
Just using a total station.
Well, reason being is because a lot of footings are subterranean.
Right.
Which means my stationing to try to get every footing captured and get a small cylindrical object captured is very tough. Doesn't work. It's very cumbersome to get what I want.
I remember doing that on a set of anchor bolts too, and we didn't get all the different sides of it. So you would have a little bit of the outline, and if you didn't replace your scanner to get all around it, whereas with a total station or something, it would just go
Boom,
bop,
right. Yeah,
and we're done. We're out. We're out of here.
Yeah, sometimes the old is good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes we don't need to improve on that idea. I think Clifton Harness made this point about, a light switch. Like we can innovate a light switch 900 ways, but we probably need to ask ourselves the question, like, is the light switch doing its job well?
Well, it's a user experience issue at that point, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I would say it's a crew experience issue for you. That's what they're used to, and they trust the process. And honestly, you're innovating in so many different other areas. I see why it's like, why is it a battle that we would fight right now? We got a bunch of other stuff, and I would argue that you're staying consistent with what you're good at. Because if you guys have been doing panelization and different stuff like that since 1970 with your grandfather, you're actually just leaning into that experience and saying like, no, we're just going to get really freaking good at that, and then we're going to go to the next step when the time is right. And we do get up in arms over like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing it? Because there's a lot of noise out there of things that you can do, but it takes discipline to say no over and over and over again. Right. Which I'm sure you feel.
Well, I think to the layout point, right? Let's talk about putting an office space into a tilt up building. When we go through and prefab all those wall panels, we are ultimately saving on all that layout as well. So we just really need to get the points of where the panels go. So it doesn't always look like using, a Light X or, whatever. It doesn't always look like using that or a Dusty, but yet innovating in your layout space. So that's what's like. Anyway, something interesting to think about. A dichotomy, shall we say?
We shall.
We shall.
Because we're smart and use big words. All right. So,
we shall? Anyway, we need to talk. We'll talk about that later. Anyway.
No, dichotomy. Dichotomy.
Shall's a 4-letter word, and I'm good at those. But dichotomy was the one I was talking about. I mean, I'm not good at 4-letter words. Anyway. All right.
Move on.
I think we're at a megaphone moment here. So we like to just break down at the end of the show and give everybody a little bit of a soapbox. And that is our megaphone question. If we gave you a megaphone that could speak to the whole construction industry, and we gave you about 60 seconds to say whatever you wanted, what would you say?
Oh, man. So 60 seconds, say whatever I want to say to the entire construction industry.
Good luck.
You're down to 50.
Gee, thanks. So if we don't start adopting digital processes, but actually also get the buy-in from our folks in the field who are building this stuff every day, we are doing ourselves an extreme disservice. The approach should be a holistic approach, right? Just like your health, right? It's not just what you eat. It's not just the medicines you take, the doctor. It's everything. It's all encompassing. And so when we look at the construction industry holistically, yes, we need to update our process to be more digital, right? Yes, we need to do as much as we can in a facility, right, that can't be done in the field. We need to get the buy-in from the field to make sure that we're doing it correctly, right? And that fits into them, because if they don't adopt it, we're completely wasting all of our time, ultimately. And so, I don't even think I need 60 seconds. So there you go.
Jeez,
boom.
Well done.
Yeah,
well done.
Good job, Dan.
Well done for an ADHD mind. I would have taken like 2.5, maybe 4 minutes to do that. So well done. Well done.
It's the ability to hyper-focus on something when you need to, right?
It's that hyper-focus component, man. It does help sometimes. Dan, dude, thanks for joining us this week, man.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Great conversation, and great to meet y'all.